Hi, my name is Stensberg. I'm quite so excited to be here today to talk about tectonic shifts in Node. If there's something that you have good use for in this talk, use it. If there's something that you don't like or have no good use for, discard it, throw it away. As I mentioned earlier, I'm Evan. I come from a little town in Norway called Flisa, which you can see at the picture here. I actually live 500 meters down below that hill, though you can't see it for what it's worth. I started programming in 2010 with C++. I was in 6th grade at that point. And I got really interested in computer programs and how you structure programs and build systems out of that. After my uncle introduced me to it, I literally got hooked up with it for the rest of my life until later on when I discovered JavaScript, which I'll come back to later. This summer I spent at Dossier Solutions in Oslo, converting our front-end build into supporting immutable data structures. So after summer I will go back to study. Thanks. So I guess some of you got a little bit confused about what tectonic shifts in Node are. I look at tectonic shifts in Node as people either changing careers or learning something completely new. So that's a tectonic shift, and that's what we are talking about here today. So let's take our first shift. Consider this. There are two kinds of people out there. The first type of people are those who are new to JavaScript and new to programming, and they struggle a bit to find the right frameworks to use, or they struggle to learn the correct way. And the way people do it at this level is they literally just kind of goes on what's hot and what's the newest tech today. So basically they have learned from someone that the library they're learning is essential to software engineering, and they got to learn this in order to be a proper software engineer. Second type is people that for some other reason have decided to learn a framework, and they are quite good at programming and they have a good fundamentals. So those are the two types we are going to speak about or to reason about here today. The first thing, or the first shift from this to take is to keep it simple. I think that keeping things simple in a framework is the key to make a framework going from good to being great. Though your library needs a bit further documentation, I advise you to try to keep it as simple as possible, even if that contains of just using simple words, because when people look at a framework, they don't really care about what words or what kind of vocabulary you're using. They just care about the content. And I think that the most important thing about the framework is how you learn other people to use it. Because if you are stuck to try to convince users to learn your library while your documentation has like this really bad typing, I think that you won't get a long way without proper documentation. So looking at the first picture here is Lodash merge. And Lodash merge and Lodash in general is pretty good at documenting things. Mainly because you have an example which the user can look at if they are a bit curious about how a method is used. And I think that if you further, or you need to document this further, you have this nice arguments list and return section here that will provide you with the details you need. But I think that there's a lot that can be used from this, and we can learn a lot from this actually. If we look at the immutable documentation, oh sorry. There we go. If you look at the immutable documentation, we can see that immutable has like some other sort of structure to show you what they have thought and how to learn your methods properly. So first of all, we got TypeScript here. We got like this small summary of what this does, and we got an example. But examples here aren't really well documented. Often we just see the TypeScript part here in Immutable. So that's something that I think that we as a community, if you are into this kind of programming and not like Node in specific, I advise you to try to contribute to this because it's not well documented. So taking what we got from Lodash and in this case Immutable, we can see that we can provide simplicity in a much better way here. We can first of all cut the TypeScript. We don't need it, but it's optional. And it's really good to show data structures with TypeScript, mainly because in TypeScript you have like this pretty consistent way of showing what you will return and what you expect it to input, instead of just plain JavaScript examples. Taking a stand from that, I think that JavaScript examples are a really good way to make sure your user is using your methods properly and that the user will use them in the way you were intended them to use them. So looking at our second shift here, we can see that documentation, that's not API documentation at all. I kind of disagree with this, to say that the documentation as a whole is not the API documentation, because in some way or another you will have to bake in your API documentation with a normal documentation. So looking at this API documentation in this use case, we will have not only what this method, for instance, can do, like technically, but what you can do in a higher level, what you can do, like what you can make with it, and how you can use it for your use case. And I think that a lot of frameworks out there that tries to show the users what you can do with, for example, a method. And they come a long way with this, and they have some merits that I think is essential to having a good library. So if you don't use this, or if you try to separate the API documentation from some other documentation, your user will basically end up like this. So let's not do that. So let's get confused. As we can see here, we have this kind of like data structure showing our ecosystem. First of all, we got Node, which is our wrapper in this use case, like the highest level of JavaScript, where we get all of our libraries from, like NPM is under Node and all of those kinds of things. So under NPM, our second tier is our libraries. This is where a major part of confusion is happening. Mainly because I think that NPM doesn't try in a much broader way to get new users or new programmers to get used to the NPM ecosystem, because I think that a lot of people are struggling with finding out what package.json is and getting correct inputs and output from terminal. That's a big mystery for some users or new beginners in this example. So that's our first targeted group. So how does this even work? That's something I try to discuss here. I can see we can find. So how does this work? That's something I've been asking myself a lot lately. How can we make this better? And what kind of questions does a beginner ask when starting with NPM and starting with Node? And I figured out like the thing that they are really struggling with is kind of like how you would sense you starting with programming. It is, what is this, or what does this do? Like why do I need to put a project in a folder, or why do I need a file specifying all my libraries? Those are questions that's really simple, and you could say that, yeah, man, this guy has some serious JavaScript fatigue, but I think that this kind of questions are really important to figuring out how we can educate even more software developers in the long term. Because I think that as per now, the people that get a benefit from NPM are those who commit in the long term, not those who commit in the short term, and some people give up like right at the start. And that is a bad thing. We want to include all people, even those who aren't familiar with computer science in forehand, before starting with Node. I think that is important, to include everybody. And things get really much worse when we include complex libraries in this, such as React and Webpack. Often we have like this paradox where we need to set up our work tools and our workflow before actually getting into the library. We need to configure this, to configure that, in order to compile this, in order to render that. And I think that it's it's a hard paradox for a beginner to be in, which I hope that we will solve. So complex libraries often fall in this meteor paradox, where you end up knowing your tools better than your library. And from an author's perspective, this is a bad thing. We want people to know our library first and not our tools or what tools they're using. So there's a lot of great bypasses that have tried to use this or to go past this, which is React Create App and some parts of Angular. Like you can init a new Angular project with just one command, which I think is a good part. Like it's a good thing. But we haven't taken it to another level. So what we get from this is people like being stuck on learning the tools for a longer period of time. They get better at ES6 and ES5 and knowing basically JavaScript, but they don't get an effective solution in the longer term. I think that they are wasting a major amount of time doing this, and they really want to start straight off the bat. And this is a bad thing here, as I mentioned. You can't start with, say, React in your project, because you have to set up your project with Babel and Webpack, for example. So you need to configure your tools, and you use so much time just configuring your tools. And I think that this is something that we could enforce even more, or not enforce. Sorry. So the thing that we could use, like, to do with this is to think UX first. We could provide like a easy configuration in NPM for people to start, like, to get the project up and running, kind of like React Create. I think this is the reason why many people are quitting with Node and frontend in the first place, is due that we don't have clear enough user experience or clear enough borders between what is frontend and what is not. Another thing is that we don't want the user or beginners to begin to code in the terminal straight away, because mainly some of them don't even know what the terminal is, really. So. Asking all these dumb questions, they do have a reason, and I think it's important to address this. So a thing that I've been impressed by is Nuclid, because Nuclid has this easy user configuration, which allows Facebook to use, and users here, it's open source, to use the tools Facebook are using in an easy manner. So imagine this being set up with, for instance, React Create. How could the user benefit from this? Well, first of all, he didn't have to use npm init or npm install. He won't have to know what npm is in the first place. He would just install Nuclid and just click on a button, and he would already have everything set up, and he was like ready to start hacking in React, which is the main goal here, to start hacking in a library instead of learning your tools. Because I think that a major amount of authors out there are concerned that people aren't really using time hacking in the libraries. They're using time trying to figure out how to put up a library out there, and it could take a big amount of time just by doing that. So I hope that you have some use for this, and thank you for speaking here. And so I'll be in San Francisco in like about 4 days more. So yeah, keep in touch. Yeah. So we could do questions. Nobody? Yeah, it's not a framework. It's an extension for Atom. Yeah, it's nucleoid. What? NUCLIDE. Yeah. Awesome, I managed to do that. So, any other questions? I'd be happy to answer. Okay, sure. Thanks.